Here it is, almost finished. I could still need to do a lot of work on this thing. I could not. I have no idea until I test it. So, let's test it. But first, before we test it, I realized I never explained why I called this thing the death bike. Why I call this a death bike is because this was actually the very first bicycle, motorized bicycle I built. The very first one was like a mini. I called it the mini bike, but it was just a really small mini bike. But it never really worked out, so I don't have it. But anyway, why I call this a death bike is because this is the very first motorized bike I built, and therefore I didn't really know what I was doing. So, as you can probably tell, the forks on this bike are really slanted. They're only supposed to be about like right there. Mine are like that. So therefore, this thing, that alone makes it really dangerous to drive because, I don't know. It's just physics, whatever. It's really difficult to drive, and it's also really difficult to turn around because there's a pivot point where if you lean and turn the wheel at a certain point, you just dead stop because the wheel hits like this axis or whatever, and it just like stops. But anyway, the second thing is because originally I had a 6.5 horsepower motor on this thing, and how I had it hooked up was same thing like this. I had a 1.5 inch sprocket, and then it went to this 10-inch sprocket, and then this 10-inch drove these bicycle sprockets. This thing is hooked up to the regular bicycle. I just cut off the pegs, or not pegs, but pedals, and just welded it onto here. So therefore, this bike has 18 speeds. See that? 18 speeds. Focus. Is it focused? That's focused. There we go. This bike has 18 speeds. Okay, now focus again. Thank you. This bike has 18 speeds. Therefore, originally how I had this thing from the 1.5 inch sprocket to the 10-inch sprocket to right to here to a 26-inch tire, this thing in first gear topped out at 45 miles an hour. It had almost zero torque, so I had to push it up a hill. But yeah, you get me on a flat road, really long flat road. And it takes a while for this thing to get up to speed. But I was able to top out at 45 miles an hour in first gear. I never got to second gear or third or 18th gear. So that is why I call this the death bike. And yeah, you're probably sitting there thinking, oh, 18 gears, this thing could probably top out 100 miles an hour or 150. I don't know. There's wind resistance. There's, this thing is not built to do that. So it could do that. I have no idea. I've never tested it. For me to test it, I would need a 2-mile long road. Flat road, no cars, no cops, no nothing to slow me down. Just floor this thing until I get to 18th gear and then look at the speedometer. But so I don't know. This thing could do 100 miles an hour. I have no idea. I have no way of finding out unless I have a 2-mile long. I already said that. But anyway, that is why I called this the death bike. And then when I took the motor off of this thing and put it on the mini motorcycle, I just kind of put this thing in storage because I've always wanted to remotorize it, and now I'm finally remotorizing this thing. This is a 5 horsepower motor. Yes, I finally figured out how much it is. You can kind of see if this damn thing would focus. Thank you. That's a 5. That's a 0. Or that's a point. Then 5.0, and you can kind of see a horsepower right there. You can't see it on the video, but so this is 5 horsepower. And why I added the extra gear reduction is because this stupid thing would focus. Thank you. Jeez. Why I added the extra gear reduction is because, yeah, it goes really slow. in first gear, but I have 18 gears. If I'm going slow, just get in a higher gear. So therefore, this thing can go either really slow up a really steep hill, or really fast in like 7th gear or like 10th gear. So that is what is really cool about this thing. That is why I added so much gear reduction. Anyway, we're not gonna be able to find out how fast this thing goes until we test it out. And before we test it out, I need to do a little preliminary test. I'm just gonna test it where it is, and let's see how this thing performs and how the belts and clutches and whatever performs. And you know, if everything adds up and everything works great, I'm gonna test it on the roads for the first time. Second time, actually. Yeah. Let's try it out. Okay, let's test it. And I don't know if I mentioned this or not, but I added a throttle. So here's the throttle. Let's try this thing out. On. Close. Come on. I don't know if you can see it in the video, but this thing slips. This is why I don't like belts. And this is why I like the belts, they're great if you can do this, because then you can step on them as hard as you fucking can, and then they'll stay. For some reason, this has serious traction, and I don't need this to have traction, or friction, or whatever you want to freaking call it. This needs to be able to slip. This needs to have zero slippage. This cannot slip, and this has to slip. But yet it's the opposite. This thing slips, and that thing never slips. So, this is why I say it's almost done. I never know if it's done or not. So, what I'm gonna try to do, I don't know, maybe buy a new belt, see if that helps. But this is a pretty good belt. So I don't know what the frick is the problem. Anyway, I'm gonna try to see if I can tighten that spring, see if that helps. Okay, as you can see, this belt slips really badly. So what I did was I went to Tractor Supply and bought this. This is gonna go here. Hopefully this new one is going to not slip. And I bought a new belt to replace this belt. So what I'm gonna do, and I also need to fix this, but before I can fix this, I need to fix this. So, first I'm gonna fix this, and then I'm gonna fix this. I had an idea of, taking like a little piece of metal, welding it to right here, and as it comes up, it pushes the belt up and off of the spring. That's, I've done this before, but I haven't done it yet on something as frictiony as this belt, or this wheel. So, hopefully it's gonna work, and we'll see if it works or not.